Saliha, sometimes transliterated Salah, meaning the good, healthy place, was a Palestinian Arab village located 12 kilometers northwest of Safed. The Franco-British boundary agreement of 1920 placed Saliha within the French Mandate of Lebanon border, thus classifying it a part of Lebanese territory. It was one of the 24 villages transferred from the French Mandate of Lebanon to British control in 1924 in accordance with the 1923 demarcation of the border between the Mandatory Palestine and the French Mandate for Syria and the Lebanon. It thus formed part of Palestine until 1948. Under the 1948 United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine, Saliha was to be included in the proposed Arab state, while the boundary between it and the proposed Jewish state was to run north of the built-up area of the village. During the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Saliha was the site of a massacre carried out by Israeli forces shortly before the village was completely depopulated. The built structures in the village, with the exception of an elementary school for boys, were also destroyed. History. There were several old structures in the village, including rock-cut tombs, traces of mosaic floors, and oil presses. The nearby Kibbutz El Sanafa contained ancient relics, such as a circular pressing floor. A wine press was excavated in the area in 2001. In the late 19th century, Saliha was a village of about 200 people who cultivated gardens in the surrounding area and built their homes out of basalt stones mortared with mud. They took their drinking water from several cisterns in a large pond. Its population was predominantly Shia Muslim and it had an elementary school for boys. In 1944-45 a total of 7,401 dunams of its land was allocated to cereals, while 422 dunams were irrigated or used for orchards. 1948 War and aftermath. Between the 30th of October 1948 and the 2nd of November 1948, Saliha was the first of 3 villages in which a massacre was committed by the 7th Brigade of the Israel Defense Forces under the command of General Moshe Carmel. In the case of Saliha, Israeli archival sources say the troops entered the village and blew up a structure, possibly a mosque, killing the 60 to 94 people who had taken refuge inside. These estimates are based on documentary evidence that include a 6 November 1948 diary entry by Yosef Namana. When Namani's papers was first published by his commander Yosef Weitz in 1965, guided by propagandistic motives, he laundered it to remove details of atrocities such as those which took place in Saliha. Namana refers to 60 to 70 men and women murdered after they had raised a white flag. Also referenced by Morris are handwritten notes taken by Aharon Cohen from the Mappin Political Committee meeting on 1 November 1948 in which Galilee, or Moshe Aram, is recorded as stating 94 in Saliha blown up in a house. In accounts recorded from interviews with Saliha families now resident in Lebanon, Robert Fisk provides a different version. Nimraoun, one of 2 survivors of the massacre in the square, says that when the Jewish army arrived, leaflets were handed over to villages saying they would be spared if they surrendered, which they duly did. The area was surrounded by 13 tanks and, while the villagers stood together, the Israelis opened fire. He survived, though wounded, by hiding under corpses and then crawling off under cover of night, finding a donkey and riding it to Maroon for surgery. In an earlier interview, Aoun said the villagers were summoned from Accra to assemble in the village square in front of a mosque. 2 Israeli officers sipped coffee as the locals gathered. The crowd was then asked to hand over their weapons, and then the Arabic-speaking officer turned to converse with his troops, after which machine guns on top of the armored cars opened fire and killed some 70 villagers. Many villagers hoped to return, waiting nearby in Lebanese villages with relatives, but they ended up settling in the Tyre suburb of Saliha. After the assault was over, the remaining inhabitants of the village were expelled, forming part of the Palestinian exodus of 1948. Naumann, speaking of the 67 men and women gunned down in the village square, asked himself in his papers, where did they come by such a measure of cruelty, like Nazis? Is there no more humane way of expelling the inhabitants than by such methods? Yoav Gelber lists Saliha alongside Deir Yassin, Abu Shusha, Saftaf, and Lida as forming part of the Palestinian pantheon of massacres. Villages where Palestinians claimed that atrocities had taken place. Today, Salman Abu-Sitta, author of the Atlas of Palestine, estimated that the number of Palestinian refugees from Saliha in 1998 was 7,622 people. Of what remains of Saliha's built structures today, Walid Khalidi writes that the only remaining landmark is a long building with many high windows. The site is a flat, mostly cultivated area. The bulk of the surrounding land is planted by Israeli farmers with apple trees. The Israeli Jewish localities of Yon and Avivim are located on the former lands of Saliha. Bibliography. Agreement between His Majesty's government and the French government respecting the boundary line between Syria and Palestine from the Mediterranean to El Hami. Treaty Series No. 13, CMD. 1910. Barron, B. ed. Palestine. Reportum General Abstracts of the Census of 1922. Government of Palestine. Bigger, Gideon, Geographical and Other Arguments in Delimitation in the Boundaries of British Palestine. In International Boundaries and Boundary Conflict Resolution, IBRU Conference, ISBN 1-85560-000-5, 41-61. Bigger, Gideon, The Encyclopedia of International Boundaries, New York. Facts on File. Bigger, Gideon, The Boundaries of Modern Palestine, 1840–1947. London. Routledge. ISBN 0-7146-5654-2. Conda, Claude Rainier, Kitchener, H. The Survey of Western Palestine. Memoirs of the Topography, Orography, Hydrography, and Archaeology 1. London. Committee of the Palestine Exploration Fund. Franco-British Convention on certain points connected with the mandates for Syria and the Lebanon, Palestine and Mesopotamia, signed Dec. 23, 1920. Text available in American Journal of International Law, Volume 16, No. 3, 1922, 122–126. Frankel, Raphael. Yonel Report. Hadashot Archaeologiot, Excavations and Surveys in Israel. Gilhar, Yitzhak, British Commitments to the Arabs and Their Application to the Palestine-Transjordan Boundary. The Issue of the Semitic Triangle, Middle Eastern Studies, Volume 29, Number 4, 690-70-1. Gelber, Joav. Palestine 1948. War, Escape and the Emergence of the Palestinian Refugee Problem. Sussex Academic Press. ISBN 1-84519-075-0. Hadawi, Sami. Village Statistics of 1945. A Classification of Land and Area Ownership in Palestine. Palestine Liberation Organization Research Center. Khalidi, Walid. All That Remains. The Palestinian villages occupied and depopulated by Israel in 1948. Washington, D.C. Institute for Palestine Studies. ISBN 0-88728-224-5. Mills, E. ed. Census of Palestine 1931. Population of villages, towns and administrative areas. Jerusalem. Government of Palestine. McTague, John. Anglo-French Negotiations over the Boundaries of Palestine. 1919-1920. Journal of Palestine Studies, Volume 11. No. 2. 101-112. Moore, Dahlia, Oweiss, Salem. Bridges over Troubled Water. A Comparative Study of Jews, Arabs, and Palestinians. Prager, Greenwood. ISBN 0-275-98060-X. Morris, Benny. The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem Revisited. Cambridge University Press. ISBN 978-0-521-00967-6. Palmer, H. The Survey of Western Palestine. Arabic and English name lists collected during the survey by Lieutenants Condor and Kitchener. Transliterated and explained by E. H. Palmer. Committee of the Palestine Exploration Fund. Rogan, Eugene L. The War for Palestine. Rewriting the History of 1948. Cambridge University Press. ISBN 0-521-87598-6. 15. No. 1. 18-39. U.S. Department of State. International Boundary Study Series. Iraq, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Syria, Israel, Lebanon.